City. So let me know if you can't hear me. I'm usually pretty loud. But yeah, let me know if you can't hear me back there. On your way as you pass there, there's the Heilbronn Monument, Adolf Heilbronn. He was a German member of the Turnverein and member of the Turner Harmony, the vocal group, and an early stock rancher and an early supporter of music in Sacramento. And we have a lot of the Turners that are buried here. We'll meet a few of them. This is the Crocker family plot. The Crockers, of course, started the Crocker Museum, but they were art supporters, but they're also music supporters. They started the Sacramento Music Society. Edwin Crocker was the president, and then after he died, Margaret Crocker was a big supporter of that as well. And in the plot right next to them, you don't have to get up, he's not going anywhere. It's Fred Fish. And Fred Fish is buried there, and he was my notes here. He was an orchestra leader in early days Sacramento. He was a native of Prussia, crossed the plains with his parents in 1852 as a teenager, settling in Sacramento. And on the handouts that I passed out, there's an ad there that has Fish and Hoff's Quadrille Band. And that's Fred Fish. As a matter of fact, on this ad here, we have buried in the city cemetery here, we have Fred Fish, we have Church, we have Jones, and we have Beebe. All three of those guys are buried here. Kreutzbergers are also buried here, so we have a lot of those guys in the early days. He was a violinist, Fish was, or a fiddle player, as they would say back then. And his orchestras played many an inaugural event and notable social event. That was his business, supplying music for dances. He was also identified with the orchestra at Turner Hall, which for decades hosted soirees where many Sacramentans learned to dance. Fish and Jones was the house band, and later George Watson was added to the partnership. He was the dance guy. And Watson is buried here too. And he apparently committed suicide in 1909, but I couldn't find any obituary for him in any of the 5 local papers at that time for the whole week, which is weird. So, another mystery. Fred Fish was one of the members of the Capitol Cornet Band that accompanied the Emmett Guard to San Francisco for a St. Patrick's Day festivity on a steamboat in 1869 when there was a small explosion. It was a steamer Chrysopolis, and some friends of the military company, the Emmett Guard was like a military guard, and some friends, but they claimed that it wasn't the members themselves. Some friends brought a cannon along to shoot off, for the festivities. And even though their request had been denied by the captain, somehow they got it on and shot it off repeatedly without anybody noticing. Until they sent a guy to get more powder down below. He happened to be smoking a cigar. So he was carrying one of the 10-pound kegs of powder. It exploded, and shocking the large crowd who were on the wharf waiting to see the steamer that was pulling into port there. It lifted the door of the mailroom, shattering the side of the saloon, disarranging the kitchen, filling the vessel with smoke. The vessel seemed to lift up bodily, and the bulkhead was split in pieces and boards were blown away. It wasn't a total catastrophe, but the smoking cabin in the deck directly above, a large chandelier came loose and was dashed to pieces. In an instant, the burning fluid in the lamps was ignited, and the flames spread rapidly across the floor. The room filled with smoke, and people thought the boiler had burst. So a man ran to the stairs and smelled the smoke and could tell it wasn't the boiler and announced what it was, preventing a panic. Some of the crowd had the presence of mind to smother the flames. The waiters came and took the wreckage of the chandelier and the lamps away. The band were in a few feet of the keg when the explosion occurred. They came running onto the bow of the boat, bow, and some of them were stunned by the concussion and would have run overboard had they not been taken hold of and held. There were no deaths. Fish and another resident who was, there's a couple people buried here that were in that explosion, were caught in the blast, and several of them, and they would suffer severe burns. Nobody died. They stayed in San Francisco and were taken care of that weekend by the wives of the Oddfellows, which may be why they stayed there. They were okay, except for Joe Contel, who had bad burns the rest of his life. And the Chrysopolis was fine after a few planks and boards were removed and replaced. So anyway, that's the story of Fred Fish. And, you can do that. We're going to walk up this way and go towards the Pioneer Plot. This is Catherine Dotzel. Pass that picture around. There. Catherine Dotzel is buried right over here. And, find my notebook. She was buried, Catherine Dotzel, she's buried here in the Pioneer Plot, Pioneer section of the cemetery. And everybody here has family who was here in 1849. So no January 1850 late members allowed here. Either them or their family had been here in 1849. So they have a lot of movers and shakers that occurred. And Catherine Dotzel was a society lady. She was the organizer and president of the Sacramento Music and Literary Club. As you can tell by her headstone, if you can get close enough to see it. She organized a series of noontime programs and was a member of the Native Daughters of the Golden West and was a singer who had studied in the U.S. and Milan. And her husband, John Dotzel, was well known in music circles as a flutist, teacher, and composer. He had studied in his native Germany and had been a flutist with the Minneapolis Symphony Orchestra, and then the Stockton and Sacramento Symphony Orchestras. By 1940s, he had composed 2 symphonies, a string quartet, ballet music, and numerous piano music. Mrs. Dotzel died in 1935 at 48 years old after being ill for several months. Not very much older than you see in the photographs that are passing around. She was not very much older than that. And I'm not sure where her husband John is buried, but okay. And let's see, did you want to do Blue Tail Fly? Sure. Yeah, go ahead and tell the background of this story. There we go. Echo. Is that all right? I was looking up Dotzel, and I have a friend who's passed away, name of Moses Hogan. I don't know if you know anything about a conductor, composer that was needed here in Sacramento, a dear friend of mine, a black fellow, and he told me about the spirituals and the song, and Blue Tail Fly was actually about a slave who would get into his master's whiskey when the master was away. And Jimmy Crack Corn was Jimmy getting into the corn whiskey when the master was on. So when you think about that, the lyrics make sense. And it says, when I was young, I used to play, and then pass the bottle when we got dry, and swept away the blue tail fly. Give me crack corn and I don't care. Give me crack corn and I don't care. Give me crack corn and I don't care. The master's gone away. Does that make sense now? Yeah. Thank you. Oh, okay. Me now,
I could play it if you'd like me to.
Yeah. Do it.
Alrighty, let's see, we have the trucks there, so